Trucker Dump, episode 196. In today's long overdue show, we've got stories on Teamster fights with Sysco and Yellow, FedEx is heading into a massive reorganization, lots of truck stop news, and what's going on with truck safety, including crash rates for new carriers, new out-of-service criteria, driver-facing cameras, drug testing, e-log violation detection, automatic emergency braking legislation pending, and the safest state for truckers, which might surprise you. We'll also talk about trucking's ongoing battle against environmental standards, how female truckers feel about their jobs, and much more. In the listener feedback segment, you weigh in on tire recycling and checking your brake lights, and we'll have some follow-up on whether day cab drivers can utilize the split sleeper berth rule without actually having a sleeper berth. As you can tell, it's a busy show, so let's get on with it.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers, welcome back to the Trucker Dump podcast, or as a coworker of mine calls it, the Toddcast. Yeah, maybe I missed an opportunity there. Should have thought of that 10 years ago. So anyway, as you know, it's been 3 weeks since my last episode? Yeah. I think the last one was just before Easter. Hope your Easter Sunday was great, whether you are Christian or non-Christian. Of course, for Christians, this is a very important holiday. This is where Jesus, was risen from the dead to save us from our sins and probably also to, get some Cadbury eggs because, Jesus likes chocolate, right? I would assume. So anyway, yes, it's been a long time. Excuses? I don't really have any. It's been a little hectic at work, no doubt. Got a lot on my mind going on with that. Kind of some crazy schedule a little bit, but for the most part, it's just a vast amount of pure laziness. I mean, I have taken procrastination to a whole new level. Here I am before I started recording today, this little segment, and I'm laying in bed and I find video after video to watch before I crawl out of bed and get started. And, I end up watching really stupid things that I wouldn't ever watch before. Like, do I really need to know how an electric motor is cast in a third world country, the old school ways? I don't think I really need to know that, but there I watched it. Then I finally crawl out of bed, I get everything set up, and then I sit down and think, I should probably go brush my teeth first, because I don't want my microphone smelling all like crap, And so I go do that, and then I come back in here and I get dressed. And as I'm putting on my socks, I think, I need to clip my toenails. So I take some time and go in there and clip my toenails. It's just a never ending struggle. I am always procrastinating on this thing. Honestly, I'm losing a lot of steam lately, as you can tell. Like I said, I think it's been 3 weeks. Hopefully I'll get this out on the third week. It may end up being 4. Oh boy, I'm just losing focus, losing motivation. Don't know how I'm going to get it back. We'll see. But anyway, we've got a fairly long episode in front of us today, since, it's been 3 weeks. Actually, this was just like 1 week of news, I think, and then I was going to publish and just didn't get it done, and so I tacked on a little bit more, but not much. So by the time I get the next episode, I'm probably going to be 2 or 3 weeks behind on the news. So if there's some big news story that I am not reporting on in this episode, you may think, well, Todd's way behind. Well, yeah, I am way behind. What a surprise. I'll hopefully catch up with it on the next episode. But at least now, that's why I'm behind. I just had no motivation to look at trucking news for the past couple of weeks or anything. Been super, super lazy. And honestly, been pretty okay with that. What I'm not okay with is this chair in the hotel room today. What a piece of junk. First thing I noticed was that it was all crooked. And so now I'm sitting with my right butt cheek about 2 inches lower than my left butt cheek. But even worse than that is I initially plopped down in it, not realizing how thin the material was on it and how thin the padding was on it. Unfortunately, this is one of those pedestal style seats. So I think that shaft went all the way up to my small intestine. Yowza. I mean, come on. I'm already struggling with motivation. I don't need that too. So with that, let's get on with this and not make this episode any longer than it has to be. And of course, we start out with the news. Okay, let's say we get started with a little bit of follow-up from the last episode where we were talking about the Teamsters and Yellow fighting quite a bit. Yeah, big pissing match, lots of letters going back and forth over there. Well, here is a follow-up on landline.media. This one was written by a gentleman named John Bendel, something like that. Anyway, he claims in the article to have no inner knowledge of the union, and so just go in with that, knowing that. But this is generally a really good article about what's going on and how I was talking about how the Teamster boss, President Sean O'Brien, needs to, he's talking pretty tough, and, you know, we like that as Teamsters, but you need to be careful with that, you know, because sometimes you're going to, you know, come up against somebody that is just as tough as you or can't abide to your demands, basically. And you got to be careful when you talk tough that you know, you're going to look weak if you back down, right? So that's what this article is really all about. For the most part, everything in here is accurate. I like a couple of quotes in here. I was talking about how Yellow is going to have to be closing some terminals to try to get this change of operation thing that they're trying to do passed. And this quote says, "It's not the kind of thing that makes union members happy. And let's face it, nobody resists change more than unions." Well, and there's a lot of truth to that. That's for sure. They're stuck in their ways. For instance, one of the things they say that Yellow is trying to get the drivers to do is work the dock more, and Yellow is fighting that. Well, the employees of Yellows are fighting that because right now they have strict class, what they call classifications, where it's like long haul drivers only drive long haul, and dock workers only do dock, and city drivers only do city work. And if you cross into other, you're not supposed to cross into other categories. You know, that way it protects each of those people's work. Get what I'm saying there? So anyway, they're saying that is an antiquated method. And well, I mean, I guess the classification part of it is, but like working the dock, yeah, okay. I think FedEx does that. There are other companies, LTO companies, who certainly do that, but there are still lots that don't, like UPS. You know, they're your Teamster company, and those drivers just drive, or they just load trucks or whatever. They have their classifications. Of course, I understand that is a union thing, but also, you know, larger companies like Estes, Old Dominion, those people don't cross borders either, and those are non-union companies. So I don't necessarily think that part of it is outdated and needs to be changed. But anyway, that's what this says in the article here. Another thing that he says is that the union seems to be acting in bad faith. Now, I keep tabs on the LTL forums on Facebook a lot because there's a lot of action going on over there, a lot of talk about this kind of stuff. And well, there is bad on both parts. Yellow is claiming to be broke, even though they have reported, I think they said the last 6 quarters have been increases in operating revenue. So that kind of, I don't know. How can you have the last 6 quarters be up? Well, I think the last 5 quarters were up and then the last one was down or something like that. But anyway, for the most part, things have been improving a little bit, and yet they come in saying we're broke and we can't afford to do this, and we will be shutting the doors in 6 months if we don't get this passed. For the record, all reports say that this has been going on for about 15 years. They say, we're going to close the doors if you don't vote this in. Everybody votes it in because they're scared, and then, well, at least they hold to the word. They do keep the business open for now, but we will see if this changes in the future. You know, if O'Brien sticks to his guns, calls for a strike, it's going to be a pissing match and a game of chicken. At that point, it sounds like it's going to be O'Brien is saying, well, we're going to go on strike because we don't believe that you don't have money. So, and Yellow, I guess at that point, will have to put up or shut up or go out of business. Anyway, I like this last paragraph here in the article. It says, contract talks are now underway between the Teamsters and carriers ABF, T-Force Freight, and UPS. With 350,000 employees, the Teamsters' biggest employer by far, that being UPS. And says, so its quarrel with Yellow may feel like a sideshow. It is not. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I said before, UPS, ABF, I don't know about T-Force, but UPS and ABF are both known to be very profitable. And so, it's less of a battle to try to get money and benefits and stuff like that out of those people than it is from a carrier who is claiming to be broke. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch. Like I said, this does affect you as a regular non-union driver because what's that saying? The one I butchered last week. I was talking about boats and the water levels rising and everything. I couldn't remember the saying. Well, thankfully, Matt McKellar, who goes by Mountain Matt over in the Trucker Dump Slack group, straightened me out. He sent me the link of Wikipedia. The actual phrase is, a rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah, that's what I was going for. So anyway, that is why union stuff affects you. I will get off of this. I know most of you are not union members and probably don't care one lick about it, but you should. Well, I said I would get off of it, but apparently I cannot yet. We're going to freightwaves.com for this one. Sysco Louisville Teamsters strike ends. First deal signed, Indianapolis over also. So this was the story we were talking about in the last episode, I believe, where Sysco was on strike in both Louisville and Indianapolis. Well, both of those contracts have been ratified and voted in. This strike lasted approximately 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. And, well, it sounds like Sysco employees made out like bandits on this one. By the end of this 5-year contract, they will have about 34.5% higher wages. Another thing the union fought for and got was better insurance premiums. In the past, it looks like Sysco drivers paid 50% of their insurance premiums, but that rate has now dropped to 20% under the new contract. And that is a staple of the union contracts where they always try to get it all the way down to zero, where you're not paying any insurance premiums whatsoever. I got to tell you, that's really nice, and it makes a huge difference in your bring home pay. Last company I was working for charged me about $150 a week for insurance, and I'm getting charged nothing where I am now. So, yeah, basically just a $150 bring home raise every week. It's very nice. But Sysco is not down to zero yet, but hey, I look for the union to go after that other 20% in the next contract in 5 years from now. There were also other issues that were addressed, including sick days, additional equipment, and safety language. And one of the big ones was actually a lot of their drivers were routinely working 16-hour shifts, which is the maximum if you get there's some sort of day shift extension. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I don't remember, but they were typically working 16-hour shifts, and that is a long shift. If you're not familiar with Sysco, this is the type of food delivery service that delivers to restaurants and things like that. That is a very labor-intensive job, and honestly, they probably deserve this 34.5% increase because it takes a toll on your body for sure. One of the last trainees I had over here at the company I work for, he came from it wasn't Sysco, but it was another one of these type of companies. And he was 40 years old, and he was getting out now because he could see the kind of wear and tear it took on the older guys over time. That's humping a lot of heavy boxes of meat and stuff like that. So anyway, at least these Sysco employees are now being compensated well for that. So that's good. So the way the union and Sysco addressed this in the contract was Sysco agreed to hire 9 new drivers, which would, basically cut down the amount of overtime that you need to work. They also agreed to keep a minimum amount of staff, so if it drops below a certain number, they're going to rehire instead of just working the current employees more overtime. And they also agreed to pay double time for any hours worked in excess of 13 hours. Now, that is going to be a big incentive on them to make sure that they are done by 13 hours. Because with these union jobs, it's usually anything over 8 is paid overtime, which is the way you want to do if you're paid overtime at all. You don't want to do the 40-hour thing if possible, because company will often just get you at the end of the week, realize you hit your 40 hours, and then just not call you to work Friday or something like that, or send you home early so you don't hit that 40-hour mark. But, when you're getting paid overtime, anything over 8 hours, well, that's an incentive right there. And wow, double time over 13 hours. Maybe I ought to go over there. No, too much work. Sounds like way too much work for me. All right. So anyway, I think this wraps up all of the union talk we have for the day, but don't take my word for that. We will see if anything else pops up. You can check out this article on freightwaves.com, and congratulations to Sysco and the Teamsters for reaching an agreement and getting back to work. As I've heard said before, no one wins in a strike. Well, I would argue with that a little bit. During the strike, no one is certainly winning, but afterwards, I think both parties win because they agreed to something. Sysco employees are getting more money now, so they are generally going to be more happy employees. And Sysco doesn't have to deal with as many grumpy drivers all the time. And as I like to point out, nobody is forcing anyone into these agreements. These are agreements. These are negotiated, and both parties agree to it. So if one party later on doesn't do their end of the stick, well, that's where you file grievances, and these things can go to court and all kinds of stuff. So, just kind of holding the company and the Teamsters to their word by the contract. So anyway, seriously, I'm getting off the union thing. Let's go on. Okay, I swear I was going to get off the union stuff, but there has been an update in the Yellow thing that's going on. Found this one over on freightwaves.com. Yellow Teamsters to hash out operational changes by reopening NMFA early. NMFA stands for the National Master Freight Agreement. That's what everyone refers to as the contract. So as we've talked about in the past, Yellow is trying to form what is called One Yellow, which they call a super regional carrier. And that is involving what's called a change of operation. And it's kind of like an agreement made within the confines of the current contract. But that is the crux of the matter here. What Yellow is wanting to do, according to the Teamsters, is change the contract too much, the current contract. And they're not supposed to be doing that. And change of operation is already written into the contract, and you have to abide by the rules within the stated contract already. You can change the way you do things a little bit, but you can't violate any of the current contract, if that makes sense. So all along, the Teamsters have been saying that if you want to make these changes that currently go against the contract, then you are going to have to reopen the contract and renegotiate everything. Because when you open up a national master freight agreement like this, you have to renegotiate everything. I mean, even things that aren't related to a change of operation, like the speed of the trucks or whether there's air conditioning in the truck. Every little thing has to be renegotiated again. And, well, Yellow didn't want that because the Teamsters also said if you're going to do that, you have to bring some money to the table. Be prepared for that, and we might give you some of these changes. So, anyway, at that point, Yellow denied them and said, no, we're not reopening the contract. Well, recently, according to this article, there was a meeting of the board of directors for Yellow, and they agreed to reopen the contract again. So this is about a year early. The contract seems to be due in April of 2024. And it is unclear if they're going to jump on this right away. The Teamsters did call for this, but they are also in the midst of contracts with UPS, which is huge, the biggest one, and will set the standard for pretty much everyone else. ABF, T-Force that I can think of, and I'm sure there's lots more. They also just got the first Amazon place in the Teamsters. So they've got a lot going on right now, and all of those are set to close by, July 30th, June 30th. I think the UPS one is August 30th or 31st. So they got a full plate. So they can put off renegotiating this contract I don't know how long, but they can put it off for a little while, I guess. Anyway, if you're interested in this, which you're probably not, you're really bored by Teamster and union talk right now. But if you're interested in it, head on over here to freightwaves.com. I'll have a link in the show notes. And now, as God is my witness, I will not talk about the union again in this episode. Hopefully. Onward. Okay, I lied. I've got another union story. Well, sort of. It's only kind of related to the union. We're talking about FedEx here. You may have heard recently that FedEx has been not making record profits like they used to, and they're now going through some restructuring to save $700 million annually. I'll have a couple of different articles I found interesting over on freightwaves.com. I'll put links to both of them there in the show notes. And since I mentioned show notes, let me just tell you they'll be in your podcast app somewhere. Just look for them. You'll find a list of links to all of these articles, or you can go to abouttruckdriving.com, search for TD196. That's this episode. And you'll see them all there. Or you can go to abouttruckdriving.com, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the newsletter, and I will send you all these links every week. Well, every podcast anyway, into your email inbox. So both these articles kind of say the same thing, but they focus on different aspects. So what they are doing in order to accomplish better profits is consolidate all of their non-LTL groups into one larger group. And they're calling it One FedEx, which is interesting because we were just talking about Yellow and their initiative is called One Yellow. So it seems to be a consolidation efforts going on here, probably due to this horrible economy. You know, people are trying to change the way they do business and save more money and all that stuff. Well, anyway, I'm not going to go into all the details on this one. You can go over here and check it out yourself. But basically what they're trying to do is reduce their use of jets. That is the real money hog for FedEx. They spend a lot of money on jet fuel and these jets. And what they want to do is try to basically non-prioritize air shipments. And if they can, they want to just ship it by ground. It'd be a lot cheaper. I guess right now they are sending some stuff overnight that doesn't really need to be sent overnight because, you know, they've got extra room on the plane or whatever, and they go ahead and send it. Well, they're just going to put that stuff on the ground and just get smaller jets. And actually they talk about getting some outside carriers to help them, some outside airlines to help haul some of their stuff. So they'll just be basically brokering it out to other people. That's very interesting. But again, they say this is going to save them $700 million annually. So that's important. Now, I will point out that the second article talks about the LTL aspect of less than truckload. And that is not going to be touched whatsoever. They're basically splitting these into two separate units. Going to have two different CEOs, two different presidents are going to treat it all like two separate companies. So it's going to be interesting to watch this one for sure. Where the union comes in on this is, well, FedEx itself is not union, but the pilots that fly those planes are unionized, and they have been in a battle for, says 21 months, and just can't come to any kind of agreement. And right now it is under the auspices of the National Mediation Board, which I did not know what that was. I had to go look it up, but that is the where the federal government steps in. That's probably what happened with the railroad situation recently, where the railroads were basically forced to go back to work. The government stepped in. So that's what's going on here. It's at the National Mediation Board, and under federal law, these, both parties have to go through a lot of lengthy steps before a strike or a lockout could occur because, they're looking at how this is going to affect the economy. So anyway, that's all I really have to say about that one. Just keep your eye on this one. FedEx is going through some changes because, well, the economy sucks. Check out both those articles on freightwaves.com. In other big business news, have you ever heard of Berkshire Hathaway? Yeah, you probably have. They are the investment group that is run by Warren Buffett. Everybody in the universe has heard of Warren Buffett. Well, Berkshire Hathaway has now taken a majority ownership of Pilot. Now, I don't know how I missed this. Apparently, this has been going on since 2017. There's been a plan in place, and I just don't know how I missed it, except for maybe that I wasn't covering the news as heavily back in 2017. Anyway, so this was a plan, like I said, announced back in 2017 to reduce the Haslam's family stake in Pilot to 20%. The Haslams are the ones who started Pilot. So back in 2017, they bought 38.6% of the company. And at that time, they also agreed to wait until 2023, where they would buy 41.4%, which means they now own 80% of the company. Interestingly, and this is why I just don't understand big business, the first thing they did is have the Pilot CEO and the CFO step down, and they replaced them with Berkshire Hathaway executives. Now, like I said, this doesn't really make sense to me, because if Berkshire Hathaway sees that Pilot has potential and the company seems to be gaining ground and they're doing that under the current leadership, why would you get rid of them? I don't know. But you know what? Warren Buffett is a much smarter man than I am, so let's just leave him to his devices. Anyway, that's all there really is to say about this, is that Berkshire Hathaway now owns 80% of Pilot. I don't know if we will notice any difference whatsoever, but according to another article I read, it's not in here, but they just said Berkshire Hathaway really liked the way Pilot was lined up to lead into all of this growth and innovation with electric vehicles and hydrogen and all that stuff. They were already on the path to doing that, and they wanted a part of that. Again, I don't know why. If you like what the current CEO and current CFO are doing, why get rid of them? But whatever. So anyway, let's move on from this and move on to another big truck stop and some stuff going on. And we're talking about Love's. Yes, of course. Wait, hold your shot glasses. Nothing to report there. But I found this one over at thetrucker.com. Love's to invest $1 billion upgrading locations. So we've all seen all of these new Love's going up everywhere, popping up like zits on a teenager. But this is not what this is really all about. They are going to open 25 new locations in 2023, but the majority of this $1 billion is going to go to refurbish old ones. Now, we've all seen the brand new ones and how fancy they are and everything, but Love's also has a lot of older ones that just really need some attention. So I guess I'd just say you need to get that shot glass all washed out and ready to go, because we're going to be talking about Love's a lot in 2023. And we're going to start with that right now. Found this one on thetrucker.com also. Love's Travel Stops buys Easy Go locations. Okay, now when I read that headline, I thought to myself, Easy Go, never heard of them. Probably some little convenience store or something that they bought somewhere, and it's not going to impact truckers whatsoever. But guess what? It will. Now, some of you are probably screaming at me right now because you recognize Easy Go. That's because there are 11 locations on the Oklahoma and Kansas Turnpike, and I cannot remember the last time I've been on either of those turnpikes. So that is interesting. So honestly, I don't know exactly what this means, because it does not look like, according to this article, that they are going to turn all these Easy Go's into Loves. But they have bought them, so I'm guessing they will implement some of the things that they have at Love's over here at Easy Go. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've been on the turnpike, so I don't even know. Are these locations bad? They never were great in the past, didn't have showers and stuff like that. So that's going to be very interesting to see if they do anything with that. So anyway, we'll keep our eyes peeled on it. And like I said, keep that shot glass handy. Found both those Loves articles on thetrucker.com. And while we're talking about truck stops, let's go ahead and hit up a brand new TA truck stop in Oklahoma. This is a TA Express. They've been doing a lot more of those lately. This one is located in Tonkawa, Oklahoma. Hey, I think that's where my father-in-law was born. It is located off I-35, exit 214. This truck stop's going to have 35 trucks parking spaces, a Baskin-Robbins, Dunkin', and Hot Stuff Kitchen restaurants. Never heard of those. Never heard of a Hot Stuff Kitchen restaurant, but Dunkin', we've all heard of that. Not a fan myself, but I don't want to offend any East Coasters. So if that's your thing, have at it. There's going to be 5 showers. Let's see what else. Pet area. That's the important stuff. They're going to have cat scale laundry, all that normal stuff. So anyway, Tonko, Iowa, I-35, exit 214. Found this one on cdllife.com. Okay, here's something you might want to be aware of. Found this one on landline.media. Distracted driving in Ohio, now primary offense. Huh? I thought primary offense? What's that? Well, honestly, I don't know. According to this article, I can't tell. I think maybe truckers were already under a primary offense and cars were not, but I'm not exactly sure. So basically what a primary offense means is that they can pull you over for distracted driving. Whereas in the past, it was a secondary offense and they could not pull you over specifically for texting or talking on your cell phone without a headset or whatever. I don't know what Ohio's laws are regarding this. They just call it distracted driving. So again, I guess basically just the fuzz are reminding everyone that they can now pull you over for talking on your cell phone or, texting if they catch you without having any other reason to do so. Now, there are certain exemptions to this, like commercial drivers can operate a data terminal is what it says. So I guess, like if you have a Qualcomm or a log and you're reaching over to tap it and see something, or maybe you got a message on your Qualcomm. I'm not exactly sure how far that extends. And there are other exemptions to this too, but those are really not regarding truckers. Now, the reason this was a little confusing to me was because this article says back in May of 2012, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration established rules, saying that a commercial motor vehicle driver cannot hold a mobile device to make a call or do anything that requires more than pressing a single button. I mean, we all remember this because of the steep fines associated with it, right? Fines can be up to $2,750 for drivers and up to $11,000 for employers who, quote, allow or require drivers to use a handheld communication device while driving, close quote. And repeat violations can result in driver disqualification. So honestly, this explains why a lot of companies have these no cell phone policies, yet they know everyone uses their cell phone, including talking on the phone when you're driving, but they have it in their guidelines that, hey, we don't endorse this. You are not allowed to do it, but they don't really enforce it. But, got to put it on there for the books to make yourself not liable if anything happens, right? Blame it on the driver. We told him not to do it. Yeah. So anyway, the FMCSA is offering these tips to truck drivers to help maintain compliance with this strict regulation. Again, I don't know if this regulation means that for truck drivers, this distracted driving is a primary offense or not. If anybody knows, write in and tell me, truckerdump@gmail.com. I assume they can pull you over if they see you talking on your phone or texting or something like that, but I'm just not sure. So anyway, the FMCSA offers these tips. They say make sure the mobile telephone is within close enough proximity that it is operable while the driver is restrained by properly installed and adjusted seatbelts. They say use an earpiece or a speakerphone function, use voice-activated dialing, and use the hands-free feature. Well, that's all fine and dandy, and I get what they're trying to do here. But anybody that has used a phone going down the road, which is pretty much everyone, right? You know that these voice-activated dialings and hands-free features only go so far. I mean, Siri's pretty great most of the time. I can reliably count on her to, me say the magic words, "Hey, lady," and I can't say it or else my phone's going to start dinging over here. But I could say, "Hey, lady, call Mark," and it will call Mark all the time because, well, I have more than one Mark in my phone, but it knows the Mark that I talk to the most, so it will call Mark. And that works pretty good. But it's less good at me specifying a specific episode of a podcast or a specific song or a specific band or whatever. You might say, "Hey, lady, play the Ramones," and she plays Journey for whatever reason. You just never know. And anybody who's used a phone know that you can't do everything with your voice. Now, you should try as much as possible, and these phones are pretty capable with basic things. But if you're trying to do something super complicated, maybe not so much. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but, well, probably with Android, but with an iPhone, I can just say, hey, lady, text the evil overlord. I'll be home at noon. And Siri will read that back to me and ask me if I want to send it, and I can do that all hands-free. So if you're not good with your smartphone, you probably ought to try to get a little bit better with it at least. Can't do everything, but you can do a lot of things. Now, this article over here on landline.media, in case I didn't mention that, it points out a couple of things that they want to make sure everybody knows is that these rules for distracted driving, they count anytime you're moving forward or temporarily stationary because of traffic control devices, or other monetary delays. So, according to this, if you're sitting at a stoplight and you decide to text something real fast, that is still illegal. Not sure how I feel about that. Although when I get that moron in front of me, that the light turns green and they're still texting, I kind of get why this law is a thing. All right. If you want to read more about this one, not really much more to say, but have at it. Landline.media. All right, let's stick with landline.media for more stuff that you might want to be aware of. I think we've talked about this in the past, but I'm sure we have. But anyway, quick reminder, 7 states pursue left lane changes. Yeah, I think we talked about New Mexico before, and I was saying that they've got a bill that was going through the motions, and they were trying to get this passed where, it's going to keep all trucks out of the left-hand lane. And, I was saying that's kind of like what California does, and it's a pain in the butt out in California. And I was saying, hey, just quit breaking the rule, get out of the left-hand lane, and maybe New Mexico won't pass this. Well, according to this article, it says that they've sent it to the governor, but I'm pretty sure I read a more recent article that said this has now passed in New Mexico. So be careful riding in the left lane out in New Mexico. The other states involved are New Jersey. They're looking at similar legislation, Florida and South Carolina also. All very similar things, just stating that you don't need to be out in the left-hand lane, and, there'll be increased fines and tickets for doing so. Now, I hate the fact that they're singling out trucks on this one, and no car should be out there riding in the left-hand lane, right? Why single out trucks? Well, thankfully, Minnesota agreed with me and all of us, basically. And it looks like Virginia is the same way. They struck down these laws that was trying to single out trucks from the far left lane use. That's great. I'm really glad to hear some states actually have some common sense in this stuff and aren't really discriminatory towards truckers. That's awesome. So anyway, just be aware of this. I shouldn't have to tell you this at all, but stay out of the left-hand lane unless you got a really good reason to be out there. And you're in one of these speed-limited trucks, I feel your pain. Be sure to head over to, I think it was Trucker Dump 66, which was called Truckers Go Turtle Racing, which was all about that frustrating situation where you're finding yourself trying to pass a slightly slower truck and you just can't get around them. Please go check out that article. I will put a link in the show notes to it, or listen to the podcast, I should say. And don't be one of these people who is a pain in the butt. If you want the short version, watch for these situations. If you find yourself in one, or you find somebody slightly faster than you trying to pass and it's taking forever to get around, tap your freaking brakes and let them go. For the love of God, please. All right. Found this one on landline.media if you want all the details on all of these proposed left lane change bills. Okay, cool. All right. This next one I found over here on landline.media. FMCSA calls for renewed safety push at forum. Wow. Imagine that. The FMCSA pushing for safety reform. Who knew? So anyway, I guess they have reason for this. They say that they've made significant strides in truck safety, reducing truck accidents over the last 30 years. But in the last 10 years, that trend has begun to reverse itself, and large truck and bus fatalities are actually increasing. Now, this article is honestly just a way to point out what they're trying to do to fix this. They are, talking about the speed limiters that they're trying to get put on all trucks out of the manufacturers. When they come off the factory floor, they will already be speed limited. They're going for these automatic emergency braking systems, and they're also looking at putting rules on the automated driving system trucks. But there's not a whole lot more to say about this article except for, well, the FMCSA is still going after safety. And I just found it really interesting as I was thinking about this. I went on e-logs in 2010. I chronicled it here on the Trucker Dump podcast in 5 separate episodes. And, my company was not one of the first ones on it, but it did adopt them fairly early on. And, that was 13 years ago. And they say these crashes have started getting worse in the last 10 years. Is anyone following here? Maybe they ought to look at that. I guess they haven't noticed that. Of course, as we all know, the ELDs were not mandated until 2018, 19? When was that? 2020? I don't remember now. But anyway, it's only been recent years that they have been mandated, but many of the large carriers switched over to these e-logs way back a long time ago. Curious, huh? Things that make you go, Laneline.media for that one. Well, that's not the only story this episode about crashes increasing. Found this one on freightwaves.com. FMCSA data shows rise in crash rates among new entrant carriers. Okay, now you remember we talked about this back in 2018, I think it was. Yeah, they started saying that there was a huge uptick in people who were becoming owner-operators and getting their own authority. For instance, in 2021, FMCSA data found that new registrants for Motor Carrier Authority averaged 17,000 per month compared to only 8,500 per month back in 2019. So it really took a ramp up during the COVID thing. People just interested in controlling their own fate and getting in their own truck. And I don't know, maybe avoiding COVID by doing that because you don't have anybody else sharing that truck and stuff like that. I don't know exactly why that was, but that is what happened. Now, here's the odd thing. The FMCSA did studies on these, any crash involving a large bus or truck, and they found that these new entrants were involved in only about 1.3% of all crashes. But from 2018 to 2021, that crash rate has risen to over 3.5%. So that's more than double. And here's something that's very odd. It said, quote, "We found that there's a general tendency among the new carriers to be in a small number of crashes in their first year of operation, and then for the number of crashes to increase over time." Close quote. Why would that be? I don't own my own truck, but I don't know. Maybe when you're brand new, you're really watching yourself, you're minding all your P's and Q's, and you're driving safely, and then you start to get comfortable. That whole complacency issue we've talked to a lot. We've addressed a lot here on the podcast. Maybe that's what's happening. They just get comfortable with it, and I don't know. They get more careless as time goes on. Interesting. Well, that's really about all there is to this article. For some reason, they kind of branch off into these level 8 commercial vehicle inspections we've talked about, which are, basically they would just be able to collect more data from your truck as you go by on the road. They're looking into doing this where they can kind of do like what they're calling a level 8 inspection while you're driving down the road. And, the cop would get, or the weigh stations would get all your details and approve you, and you wouldn't have to go into a weigh station. You wouldn't have to get pulled over, all those kind of things. But that is not going on yet for the most part. There's a little bit of that going on with like DriveWise and pre-pass, things like that help you go around the scales. But the way this talks about is, I'm not sure about this, but I think the pre-pass and stuff, it's just kind of a one-off thing. It just sends a rating basically to the weigh station, and then the weigh station, it says whether they need to be pulled in or not, if they're a frequent offender or something like that. But then that data just goes away, whereas this would actually be storing all this data over long periods of time, all these trucks passing by weigh stations to try to improve safety, of course. Never mind our privacy. Why bother with that? So anyway, if you want to read about this stuff, head on over to freightwaves.com. Of course, link in the show notes. Sticking with the topic of crashes, let's head over to ccjdigital.com. That's Commercial Carrier Journal. This one's called "Study Shows Michigan the Safest State for Truck Drivers." Really? When I read this headline, I couldn't help but kind of joke to myself. I was like, well, of course, Michigan is the safest state. It's because the roads beat the holy heck out of you and you're constantly perky and awake because, well, you can't get drowsy in Michigan. Just too many bumps, right? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go into all the gory details about this one. I'll just say that they say that Michigan is the safest state for truck drivers with only 4.72% of its fatal crashes involving large trucks. Vermont is the second safest state. Hawaii is number 3. Delaware is number 4. And rounding out the top 5 is Massachusetts. Now, that's the best. What's the worst? Well, I'm guessing driver Chris Mack would know. Wyoming, least safest state for truck drivers. 18.97% of the state's total crashes involved large trucks. This is not surprising. They get lots of bad weather up there, lots of high winds. What a shocker. Guess what's next? Idaho, 16.33%. Yeah, again, lots of bad weather. Nebraska, bad weather. Iowa, bad weather. North Dakota, bad weather. Well, that rounds out your top 5. So basically, using common sense, bad weather equals more crashes. Who knew? Check this one out on ccjdigital.com. Okay, this next one probably won't concern most of you unless you are an owner-operator or perhaps a lease driver. This one I found on thetrucker.com. CVSA's 2023 out-of-service criteria now in effect. Now, trust me here, I'm not going to go into any detail on this one. Basically, there are about 9 changes that were done to the out-of-service criteria, ranging from drug testing to headlights to recording duty status to brake systems, cargo securement, suspension, all kinds of stuff in here. So if you are responsible for keeping your truck up to snuff when it comes to this kind of stuff, head on over here and check this one out. There's got to be like a downloadable list of this somewhere, but I don't know how thorough this article is. But hey, head on over here and check this stuff out if you need that kind of information. TheTrucker.com. Short and sweet for a change of pace. All right, back to Commercial Carrier Journal for this one. New AI monitoring system showing Grondike a lot of things prior system did not. Well, that was a mouthful. So I hope I'm saying the name of this company right. I think I called it Grondike at one point, and I was corrected. I think it's just Grondike. Again, whatever. I'm going to call them whatever in this article. Grondike. I'll go with that. So what they're doing here is adding AI video technology from a company called Samsara. Now, the way I understand it, they are one of the biggies in the industry. And basically what they're saying is these new AI systems can pick up things that the old monitoring system could not. For the record, in case you're completely out of the loop, AI stands for artificial intelligence. So if you've ever had one of these dash cams in your truck, basically the way it usually works is if there is an event, it will be reported to the company like Samsara, and they would review it and they would send it off. Anything meeting a certain set of parameters, they would send off to Grondike, whatever, and they would review it and, decide to take disciplinary action or training or whatever they wanted to do with that footage. But they were saying they were missing a lot of things by this system because it only triggers if there is an event like a hard braking or a swerving, or the camera picks up that you've run a red light or something like that. But now, of course, what they're talking about is cell phone use. Yes, AI will be able to pick up you looking at your cell phone. We talked about this a long time ago, how these AI systems are coming about, and they've actually added. It doesn't talk about that here, but we've talked about this in the past where these new AI systems can actually read your face. They can see what your face is doing, and like it will count your blinks. And it's common knowledge, I guess, that you blink more when you're tired. And so the more you blink, the more it would register that, hey, you're tired and we better send this guy a warning and make sure that they pull over and get some rest. Or they said like it can monitor if your head is moving up or down, like if it nods off, they would be able to tell if you are falling asleep at the wheel. Okay, sounds great, but what happens when you're bobbing your head to music? Or, you just look down at your Qualcomm or your e-log and it thinks you're looking at your phone. It does say the system is not perfect yet by any means. As it says, neither are the drivers. So both parties need some help here. But they are saying that these new systems can help with costs for the company. For instance, anytime an event takes place, like a hard braking or swerving or whatever it may be, it will get sent off to these companies. They will review it, and usually they are charged per time for that. But they're saying with these newer systems, it's more selective about it. Like it can tell, like it's looking at the road and it can tell, like if a car pulled out in front of you, that's why you had a hard braking event. It's not like it was your fault or anything like that. And maybe that event won't go to the company and therefore you won't be charged for it. So in the long run, it could actually save them money. So now apparently there is something to this. A company called Chalk Mountain Services, a leader in the oil field industry, has reported 86% decrease in preventable accident costs since adopting this Samsara AI camera system. They've also seen a 15% improvement in driver retention. I'm not sure about that one. This article also goes on to say that Klondike drivers have been reacting favorably to the new system. Really? I'm just not sure I buy that one. Apparently Klondike is a really good company. They've won the National Tank Truck Carrier North American Safety Champion Award 8 times. I don't know what that really means, but it sounds good. So apparently they are a pretty good company to work for, but I just find it really hard to believe that drivers are actually happy about being recorded all the time and having their cell phone use looked at and all of that stuff. Now, I'm not promoting the use of cell phones, but as we've talked about in the past, sometimes if you want to find a specific podcast or a music or something like that, you do have to look down and you cannot do that stuff with one tap. Yeah. Well, one of these days, this industry is going to get what they want. Robots to drive these trucks, and they won't have to worry about this kind of stuff. But for now, probably the next 50 years or so, they're stuck with us drivers. And they will probably try to implement more and more of this type of AI stuff. Now, interestingly enough, it does say in here that there are some privacy features that have been added to both Samsara and another company called Mobile Mule AI. They say that there's some privacy features, like they can blur out the person's face, or they can completely black out the video and just use, it says biometrics to show driver behavior while not revealing their faces. Interesting. But they've said they've employed that in some situations where, to appease union concerns. I know my union is totally against the use of driver-facing cameras. We do have road-facing cameras, but they do not allow driver-facing cameras. We will see if that changes in the future, but I know my fellow drivers don't want any part of that crap. So anyway, actually we have written into our contract that they cannot discipline us with this stuff either. So even the road footage, they can't discipline you. All they can do is bring you in for coaching, which honestly, I've seen some improvement with drivers that I know who were blatant offenders of certain things, like running stoplights or not stoplights, but rolling through stop signs, things like that, that they've actually, even though they hated the system, they hated getting called in, they don't do it anymore. Guess why? Because they don't want to get called in. And that's what my safety manager told me. I am a safety trainer here at the company, and they told me that's really our whole goal, is just to get people to not want to trigger these events. They don't want to be in there, sitting in there talking to a person about how they can improve their safety. So just don't do it, and then you don't have to go in. It's pretty simple. And guess what? I think it kind of works. But this driver-facing camera thing, that's a whole new thing. Yeah, not a big fan. And when it comes to this kind of stuff with driver-facing cameras, I know you don't think I'm full of crap by saying that, but I'm not full of crap. Just to prove it, let's head over to overdriveonline.com. Headline reads, new research confirms truckers' disdain for driver-facing cameras. See? Told you. So this is a new report released by the American Transportation Research Institute, or the ATRI. And guess what? Yeah, the research shows on a scale of 1 to 10, 2.24 is the rating they get. That's about 650 users from across the industry that took this survey. And yeah, just 2.24 is how much they like that on a scale of 10. So not big fans. But where they were ranked the lowest was privacy concerns. They got a 1.73 for drivers who are already using these devices as far as they're concerned for privacy. And for drivers who have never used anything like this, it's a 0.78. So it's really low. Drivers don't trust these things for privacy, especially. You know, you hear about drivers all the time who put like a hat over the camera when they're in the bunk and they're trying to sleep and stuff like that. Personally, I don't want them looking in on me and my boxers. No, not interested in that. Quite honestly, I can't imagine any weirdo wanting to look at a old trucker in boxers anyway, right? But you never know. Got some real pervs out there. So anyway, I know I probably didn't even have to cover this article because, you know, most of you already know that these driver-facing cameras are not popular. But, you know, if I can have an article from an actual news source that shows that I'm not just blowing smoke, I'm all for that. Head on over to overdriveonline.com if you want to read more about this subject. You know, I think you've probably figured out that I am a technology guy. I like it. It interests me. Sometimes I really hate it, like these driver-facing cameras. Other times I think it's really cool and can be very, very helpful. Let's go to transport topics for this one. That's ttnews.com. Technology helps minimize tractor-trailer pairing errors. All right, this story is about how Nussbaum Transportation, they're based in Hudson, Illinois, got 550 tractors, approximately 1,300 trailers. They started using this technology, which basically helps you pair a truck and a trailer, and it will help you find these trailers. You know, that is a big problem in the industry. If you've ever went searching for an empty trailer in a huge lot and you can't find it, maybe it's in a dock, you know, and you're looking out in the lot, or, you know, maybe you just drove right past it because two numbers are very similar, or just a couple of numbers of the trailer number are transposed or whatever. You know, maybe they gave you the number 5687 and they meant to say 5678, you know, something like that. And you're looking around for this trailer that doesn't exist, basically. They say it can take, you know, 15 to 45 minutes sometimes, depending on how big the lot is, just to find what you need. Well, this software, it's not software, it's hardware, actually. It's like a beacon on the trailer, and a beacon will connect to the computer system on your truck, and the truck will tell you what you're looking for, what trailer, or not what truck you're looking for, what trailer you're looking for. And it will also tell you things like where it's at on the lot, if it's loaded or unloaded, things like that. And even if the DOT inspection is up to date. That's pretty cool. So like I said, right now there's two different methods of this. One company called Orbcom, they have a like this broadcasting system. Like I was saying, there's a little receiving device or a sending device on the trailer, and it connects with the truck, probably through Bluetooth. I'm not sure exactly how that works. But there's another company called Clariance Technologies, and they have a tethered version, which basically uses the same kind of technology, only it goes through the 7-pin connector, you know, from the tractor to the trailer. And it, basically what these systems do is it's not really designed to like correct you and tell you, hey, you've hooked to the wrong trailer, although there are ways to do that. But these basic systems are just there to say, hey, this is the trailer you're looking for. And then when you hook up to it, the trailer says, yes, this is the trailer, but it won't like warn you and give you a warning if you've hooked to the wrong one, if that makes sense. Not sure that it does, but you know, anyway, it just gives you the tractor number you're in, the trailer number you're looking for. And then it's kind of up to you to, look at that and say, yes, those things match. But you know, that way you're not looking at a number wrong on a trailer. Get what I'm saying? I'm not sure if I'm making a lick of sense. Hey, what's new? But anyway, if you're interested in this, I'm always interested in technology that can help you find, you know, make your day go easier. And I mean, who hasn't been out there looking for a trailer for a half a day, you know, for one trailer, or just running around trying to find empty trailers? That's one thing I like about this too, is it can actually tell you if the trailer is loaded or empty, or it's in the dock, or where it's at. That's all cool stuff and great information for the driver. Of course, it's going to take a big fleet to implement this kind of stuff. Wouldn't do my owner-operator much good to do that if he's only got just a few tractors and trailers. But for a bigger fleet like a Nussbaum here, or even some of the larger ones, it would be a great idea. I just wonder how expensive this thing is. Doesn't say. But anyway, if you're interested in this kind of technology, head on over to Transport Topics, TT News, and check that one out. Cool stuff, man. Sticking with fancy pants technology, how can we talk about technology stuff without talking about autonomous trucks? Found this one on freightwaves.com. Landing and launching terminals for autonomous trucks getting closer. This article mostly covers a company called Aurora. They have been doing a lot of Texas runs between Dallas and Houston. They do about 50 a week now, and they want to go up to 100 a week. They say they'll be doing that by the end of the year. But in order to do that, they need support, right? And one of the things they need is locations to take these autonomous trucks and trailers into. By the way, they do have drivers right now in all of these trucks still for the time being. They are not supposed to do anything unless they absolutely have to. That's the whole idea. They're just sitting there monitoring it, waiting for something to happen. Whew, I can't imagine a more boring job than that. It's bad enough driving when you actually have to pay attention, but in this, you're just kind of, well, I guess you're paying attention, but you're not actively doing anything. It seems like it'd be really hard to focus. That's just me. But hey, if somebody wants to pay me a buku money to do that, whatever, I'll go for it. So anyway, like I said, this was really about Aurora. They have set up a terminal just south of Dallas. So basically it says when a truck gets back from Houston and it pulls into the Dallas terminal there, these exterior lighting changes color. So, and it means that it's safe to approach the vehicle. That means a driver or possibly just a yard guy, I guess, can go in there, hop in the truck, take it over there, get it fueled. They've got stations to set up like sensor calibration, things like that. They can do maintenance and inspection, and, they've got people specializing in that kind of stuff right there on site, so you don't have to go off site to have maintenance. They'll do all the drop and hooks, and then once it's ready to go, they'll be out the door. Now, they're saying this process right now takes about 2 hours, which is a long turnaround, and they realize that is a long turnaround, but they're just trying to be safe on this. They want to make sure every time that truck goes out, it is completely calibrated and ready to go, because like we've talked about before, the last thing these autonomous companies want is a wreck. That will not look good on them. It will set everything back, as it has in the past. Every time there's a slight incident with the truck, it gets, with an autonomous truck, it gets all kinds of looked at and scrutinized, as it should. So anyway, just kind of letting you know that this is starting to move forward a little bit. These companies are actually starting to set up infrastructure to take care of all of these autonomous trucks. There's also more in this article talking about other of their competitors like Torque Robotics, Kodiak Robotics, who we've talked quite a bit about, and Gatik, and it just kind of goes into how they're handling this stuff. Basically, they're just all still looking at the best way to handle this infrastructure thing. They're not near as far along as Aurora is. So we'll keep an eye on this one. And hey, if any of you are out there on I-45 between Houston and Dallas and you see one of these trucks, they look like they're black and they've got lots of sensors and stuff on them. Looks like black Peterbilts. So, let me know if you see one of them. And, well, you'll probably notice a driver in the front seat. Hopefully, since they're supposed to be there, you'll notice a driver in the front seat. Hopefully they're not in the back taking a nap somewhere. But hey, write in. Let me know that you saw one. Just tell me what your thoughts about that were and the feelings you had about that, and whether you tried to get around it fast or you just tried to, sat behind it and watched it for a while. Yeah, do that. Actually sit behind one of those. If there's any indication on the trailer that it's an autonomous vehicle, sit behind it and see how well it does. I'd be interested in that. Anyway, send that off to truckerdump@gmail.com. And again, this article I found on freightwaves.com. Hey, here's a little inside baseball for you. Every time I do one of these stories, I hit the record button and then I jump over to Safari and I get details out of the article that I'm looking at. And then I always want to switch back to the audio app and hit stop and then hit save. That's just my method. I like to make sure, if I record something that I don't lose it. So save it immediately. Inevitably, 75% of the time, I hit the wrong icon. It's the same icon. It never moves, but I always hit the wrong one. I can hit one of 2 or 3 other apps that I use while recording this, but for some reason, I never hit the right dang one. What is wrong with me? Anyway, speaking of things that are wrong, let's go to thetrucker.com. White House reviewing proposal to require automatic emergency braking on big rigs. Sorry, I shouldn't have made that little snide comment about the White House, but there you have it. This one is all about the emergency braking on big rigs that is being proposed. And this is just the next step. It has gone to the White House, and the president will have to sign off on this before it can go into the Federal Register, where it will receive public comments, and everybody will be able to talk about this. So, of course, like I said, what we're talking about, these are automatic emergency braking systems, AEBs, and they're wanting them installed on all new heavy trucks coming out of the factories. I don't remember when they're saying they want that to start happening. But, I don't remember when that is. But they're saying, that it does reduce accidents. Of course, I could see where that would be for the most part. A computer is looking at or a camera, whatever it is, looking down the road, and it can see something dart out in front of you, and it can react before you have a chance. I have experienced this with my own truck, but I've also experienced lots of false braking systems, and that's what the Owner Operator Independent Driver Association, or OIDA, they've been really touting this, that we really need to make sure this works well, especially at night when it often tends to fail, before we just say every truck out there has to have these systems. I know we've gone over this ad nauseum. Sorry about that. But these systems actually do show in statistics to reduce crashes. They say anywhere right around 41, 44% rear end crashes are reduced by these emergency braking systems. And I could see that. Like I said, we drivers do tend to get distracted by, who knows, whatever, a billboard even, something like that, our phone, whatever we're doing that we're not supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be looking at the road, but we are not robots. But the thing in the truck is kind of a robot, and it can look out for that kind of thing, and it can brake immediately. It will scare the holy hell out of you when it happens. Trust me on this one. But, it's going to be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this does pass eventually. That I just fully expect it's going to happen. Back in 2016, the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is that right? Well, they brokered a deal with 20 automakers representing 99% of new passenger vehicles to make automatic emergency braking systems standard on all models by September of 2022. So any vehicle that you're buying nowadays, as far as car-wise, is likely going to have this emergency braking standard. And this was voluntarily done by the manufacturers. We'll see if the truck manufacturers go along with it as easily. I bet you they do. I'm honestly surprised this even has to go to, through the government. I thought they honestly would just kind of buckle and say, yeah, we think this is a good thing too. Maybe they are not confident that they are going to get it right 100% of the time either. Very interesting. Well, there's lots more in this article. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, head on over to thetrucker.com to learn more about what's going on with these emergency braking systems. And I hit the wrong icon again. Good Lord. All right, it's time to enter a less fun part of the podcast where we talk about environmental standards. Yep, here we go again. The first article we got here is from thetrucker.com. EPA approves California rules phasing out diesel trucks. So we've talked about this before, but just as a reminder, here's what's going on. These new truck standards that the EPA has approved are aimed at companies that make trucks and those that own large quantities of them. For example, companies owning 50 trucks or more will have to report information to the state about how they use these trucks to ship goods and provide shuttle services. As far as manufacturers go, they're going to have to sell a higher percentage of zero emissions vehicles starting in 2024. Depending on the class of truck, zero emissions ones are going to have to make up 40 to 75% of sales by 2035. Now, the problem with this is they've increased these standards from the from the first proposal, and they just keep, wanting more and more and more, faster and faster and faster. And I'm going to quote ATA CEO and President Chris Spear again. And when he addressed this, he said, quote, by granting California's waiver for its so-called advanced clean trucks rule, the EPA is handing over the keys as a national regulator. This isn't the United States of California, and in order to mollify a never-satisfied fringe environmental lobby by allowing the state to proceed with these technologically infeasible rules on unworkable and unrealistic timelines, the EPA is sowing the ground for a future supply chain crisis. First, let's just give Spears some props for being able to say all that. I don't know how. I barely got it out, as you heard, but he just whipped it out, apparently. So anyway, as Spears has mentioned before, over the past 35 years, the collaboration between the trucking industry and the EPA as far as emission standards has produced a 98% reduction in truck emissions. But transportation in general, cars and trucks, make up to 40% of California's greenhouse gas emissions. All right. Well, that's 40%, but it's 90% less than what it used to be 35 years ago. But, never enough. Not until we get to this zero emissions vehicles, which just basically means that they're going to be pumping out more and more electricity from coal plants, probably, to power all of these electric vehicles. Oh, boy, they just don't get it, do they? But let's head over to landline.media for some kickback on this. This one's called Representative Niels, N-E-H-L-S maybe, introduces measure to overturn EPA rule. So no sooner than it got approved, this senator is going after them, saying these are unrealistic guidelines, basically, and we need to not do this. It's going to cause all kind of damage to the economy, to the supply chain, because, trucks aren't going to be able to comply with this. Truckers, I should say. It's just going to wreak all kinds of havoc. So this is a really short article on here. There is another interesting part in here where a different senator, Senator Fisher out of Nebraska, she contends that this EPA rule could actually have a negative effect on the climate. And you might think, well, how could that be if we're having zero emissions vehicles? Well, it has nothing to do with more coal plants, but it has everything to do with these high cost of the new trucks and truckers not wanting to go electric for whatever reason. What that mean? They're just going to keep their old trucks, right? Which are going to be less eco-friendly than these electric trucks or even a newer truck. They just don't want to get into it. They want to stick with the older technology, and probably many of them will do so. Interesting thought there, Miss Fisher. Well, I guess we'll have to see on that one. But we're not done with this EPA stuff. Let's head over to ccjdigital.com for this one, Commercial Carrier Journals. Headline here is Trucking Orgs Tee Off on Biden's Zero Emissions Plan. Let me quote Todd Spencer on this one. Mr. Spencer is the president of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, or OIDA. He says, quote, Wednesday's announcement is a blatant attempt to force consumers into purchasing electric vehicles while a national charging infrastructure network remains absent for heavy-duty commercial trucks. Professional drivers are skeptical of EV costs, mileage range, battery weight and safety, charging time, and availability. It's baffling that the EPA is pushing forward with more impractical emissions timelines without first addressing these overwhelming concerns with electric commercial motor vehicles. The pursuit of this radical environmental agenda in conjunction with an anticipated speed limiter mandate will regulate the safest and most experienced truckers off the road. Well, I agree with most of that. Although I'm not sure that it will drive truckers off the road, because truckers often say they will get out of the industry if such and such happens, and then they just don't do it because truckers are truckers and they just adapt over time. But yes, I mean, really the most baffling thing here is they just want all of these trucks to be, completely electric, and just the infrastructure isn't there. This world is not ready for EV trucks. And they just won't accept that fact. They'll figure it out probably the hard way when they push all these standards, and then, we start having supply chain issues again. But, well, I guess we'll just have to see how this goes. By the way, there's another article over here on landline.media that supports what we were just talking about truckers not wanting electric trucks. This one's called "Most Truckers Have No Interest in Electric Trucks," survey reveals. Now, again, we've talked about surveys, and sometimes they are inaccurate, but I think for the most part, this one is probably right on target. This one was done by Commercial Truck Trader. I don't know what they do, but it basically said that 79% of truckers said they would never add an electric vehicle to their fleet. Only 13% said they might, and only 5% said they plan on buying an electric truck right away. 4% indicated they will do so within 5 years. I'm guessing that 5 and 4% are probably ones who have specific needs where maybe they have a local delivery vehicle that it makes sense to have an electric vehicle. But, for the vast majority of truckers who are over the road, they have no interest in this whatsoever. Some other interesting parts of this survey. More than 40% of those surveyed said they would buy an electric vehicle to save money at the fuel pump. That would be their main reason. About 1 in 5 said they would purchase one simply because it lowered emissions. And about a third indicated they would acquire an electric vehicle because they usually require less overall engine maintenance, which is true. But there are also plenty of reasons not to buy an electric truck. Nearly 60% are worried about the low mileage range and battery life. Talked about that a lot, right? Half are concerned about the time it takes to charge a battery, and 45% see issues with finding a charging station. Only 11% of those surveyed found no drawbacks to electric trucks. So there we have it again. It's mainly about the infrastructure and the battery life and the mileage range on these things. Something the EPA just can't seem to grasp. And according to the survey, it also kind of sounds like the electric vehicle situation is a wait and see approach. About 30% said they might feel differently if they had testimonials from current electric truck owners. And about 20% said they'd like to see other fleets buy them first, and maybe that would change their opinion. So yeah, kind of just, hey, we're waiting to see who's going to buy them and how it works out for them before we jump in with both feet. Makes sense to me. I mean, if you're not a huge company, you probably cannot afford to just jump in and hope things work out. You need something that is tried and true, which again goes back to the fact that these truckers might be keeping their old trucks because they just work most of the time. They don't want to try something new. I can't really blame them, can you? Anyway, you can find this one on landline.media. Got anything else here as far as eco stuff? Well, yeah, we do. Overdriveonline.com for this one. Report: hydrogen will emerge as zero-emission solution for long-haul trucking. Now, this one is interesting. They go through all of the different ways that you can power a truck, battery electric, hydrogen, sustainable liquid fuels. And basically, the consensus is that the best option for over-the-road trucks is not electric, but hydrogen. There are a lot more details in the article if you're interested in this, but I just kind of wanted to bring that to mind that, hey, we've talked a little bit about hydrogen in the past, and, there are some companies working on that, but maybe with surveys like this coming out and studies showing that, hydrogen might be a long-term, might be the preferred method for over-the-road trucking, maybe more companies will get involved in this and they will start pushing this harder than they will for the electric and, maybe have a viable solution instead of these stupid electric trucks that they're counting on. Anyway, we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. Like I said, if you're interested in this kind of stuff and all kinds of cool little pretty charts, head on over to overdriveonline.com. Switching up subjects, let's talk about some reefer, and not the kind that you pull behind a truck. Found this one on thetrucker.com. ATRI seeks truck driver input on impacts of legalized marijuana. Of course, the ATRI is the American Transportation Research Institute, and they've launched a survey. They want to understand the impacts of state laws legalizing marijuana on the trucking industry and its workforce. Now, this is an online survey, and it's available through April 28th. I have put a link to it in the show notes. You will see that at research.net. So just go into the show notes and click on it and go over there and take that survey. It's really fast. I went and did it, and it was over in like probably 5 minutes. Not much to it. But hey, get your voice heard on this stuff, especially if you want to smoke reefer one day. Okay? Again, just check the link in the show notes or head over to thetrucker.com and you'll find a link within the article. Although I don't know why you would if I put an article right there in the show notes. If you're in the show notes already, why not just click on the right link? Gee, do I have to do everything for you? Speaking of Mary Joanna, let's head on over to Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. I've wondered about this for quite a while, and it looks like they're addressing the issue here. A drug expert weighs in on safety of alcohol versus marijuana. So this drug expert, his name is Todd Simo. A lot of Todds in this episode, isn't there? He is the chief medical officer for HireRight, which is the company responsible for the DAC reports that you hear about for truckers. But he says that you often hear people say that marijuana is just like alcohol, but safer. But he says that's not exactly accurate. In one way, of course, pot is safer. He says you can't eat enough gummy bears laced with THC to die. You can't drink enough alcohol to die. So there's that. But he says from a safety perspective, both alcohol and marijuana, you're going to have accidents. Of course, alcohol has, reduced inhibitions. You're probably going to drive faster and stuff like that. But he says it's just as unsafe to be a person who's high on weed and you're driving really slow, and you're way more likely to stop at a green light, or when you come out to an on-ramp, you can't make a rapid decision because your mind's moving slower because of the weed. And so there are other issues to think about. Now, this goes on into more stuff down here. One of the things I found interesting was they were talking to a gentleman from FedEx who talked about how, because there's so much marijuana use nowadays that they've actually started, of course, their drug screens, they screen for all kinds of drugs. But if it just comes back with positive for marijuana, it depends on the kind of job that you have. Like they don't want anybody with a positive marijuana test to have a safety sensitive job like a driver or something like that. But if it's maybe a clerical work or something like that, they're just going to kind of let that slide. And that is, not surprising. A study in 2021 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration showed that 13% of Americans are using marijuana. That's about 52 million people. That's more than double the amount that logged in 2002. Now, of course, since 2021, it's now 2023. We've added even more states that have legalized it, Missouri being one of them, which is my home state. And, so those numbers are probably even larger now. So this is going to become an issue. And of course, with trucking, the problem is you can't tell whether somebody is impaired at the moment. With alcohol, you can use a breathalyzer and you can just tell if somebody's wasted right there on the spot. But with a marijuana user, you cannot. Also, marijuana stays in the system a lot longer than pot. So, you could smoke it, 3 months ago and still show that you're high when you're not. Maybe you've given it up completely. Probably not. But, maybe you've given it up completely, but that is not what the tests show. They say at this point, they can't use oral fluids or any kind of fluid for that matter coming out of your body to test it. They say right now what they're looking at, researchers in Germany and Austria are trying to figure out a way to see if they can tell if a person is high by how fast their pupils react. So that's about the spot we're in. We're grasping at straws here, trying to figure out a way how to figure out if a trucker is stoned or not, or any a vehicle driver, I guess. But interesting little article here, and I'm sure this will be addressed more and more. I've often wondered, like, what does this do to, when a state legalizes marijuana, not just for driving and accidents and stuff like that, but for crime, I don't know, for work attendance, things like that. I wonder about all that stuff. I could probably go look up some of this information, but I'm just too stinking lazy and too busy. If somebody wants to weigh in on that and let me know what they have heard, or some cool article that explains it all and I can read it all in one pop, please send that to me, truckerdump@gmail.com. Yes, you will be enabling my laziness, but I'm okay with that. All right. Check this one out on Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. All right. This next one ought to go pretty quick too. Found it on landline.media. FMCSA provides updates on driver compensation and detention time studies. So yes, as a part of the infrastructure package that passed back in, 2020? Anyway, no, 2021. That's when it was. There was, guidelines in there that said that the FMCSA was going to have to study driver compensation and detention time. That's just a couple of things they were going to discuss. Well, they're still in the process of doing that, but some of the interesting things they have found so far, I just thought I would share with you. So some of the findings here seem to indicate that just a 15-minute increase in time spent at a shipper or receiver getting loaded, that kind of delay, will increase your rate of a crash rate by 6.2%, and that detention time costs between $1.1 and $1.3 billion each year. The OIDA Foundation survey found that drivers lose as much as $1,500 each week as uncompensated detention time. Wow. Knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. I'm guessing that's because owner-operators, OIDA is an owner-operator organization, and those drivers probably charge more for that detention time than, say, a company driver would lose by, sitting there waiting to get loaded. Interesting. By the way, this was all revealed at the Mid-American Trucking Show back on March 30th. And the FMCSA's presentation showed that detention time accounted for as much as $1.3 billion in lost wages and as much as $6.5 billion in driving time. And thankfully, the FMCSA's Jonathan Mueller called fixing detention time a high priority in the industry. Well, it's about time. But hey, don't count on anything soon. This is the government we're talking about. This is a 3-year study, and it's scheduled to conclude in July of 2025. So be patient. All right, let's switch gears here and talk about female truckers. Found this one on ccjdigital.com. ccjdigital.com. Didn't say that very well. That is Commercial Carrier Journal. Title of this article: Female Trucker Surveys Divide Proponents on Pay and Cab Design. So this article is a little bit all over the map. It covers safety, like whether women truckers feel safe. They say 68% of female truckers do feel safe when working compared to 78% of male drivers. So while, females do feel less safe than men, it's not that great of a distance between those two genders there. But here's an interesting result from this survey that, surprised me, honestly. The survey revealed that 89% of female drivers feel safe when sleeping in their truck compared to 11% who do not. That one actually surprised me. I figured women would feel most vulnerable when they were, asleep in their bunk, possibly not fully dressed and just didn't, to be woke up out of your sleep and with fear in your heart would be a bad thing. But apparently, I guess, I don't really know why that would be, but maybe it's because, when a truck is parked and it's sitting there overnight, nobody knows whether there's a dude or a woman in that truck. I don't know, unless a dude has watched the woman get into that truck. Anyway, I guess it shouldn't surprise me at all that I have misunderstood women again. What a surprise. But the article goes on and explains that, one particular time when women don't feel safe is when they're with a male trainer. Now, that one we've talked about quite a bit in the past where, there's been cases of sexual harassment going on between a male trainer and a female student. And that should never happen, of course, but that would obviously make you feel less safe. But in general, it says 55% of female respondents agreed or strongly agreed that trucking is a safe industry. So that's good. It should be way higher than 55%, but, hey, hopefully that will get better over time. Now, within this article, there's a really good infographic. You might want to take a look at that. Again, link will be in the show notes. And the article goes on and talks about different topics like, for instance, the trucks. And we've got some disagreement going on here. Women in Trucking founder Ellen Voya suggests that women need trucks that are more designed for women. While Desiree Ann Wood, who is the president of Real Women in Trucking, disagrees. She says that truck design doesn't matter at all. She says women have been trucking since 1918 when commercial vehicles were first designed during World War I. She talks about that one of the founding members of an organization she's a part of, has over 54 years of experience. She was out here trucking long before there was power steering or even bathrooms and showers specifically devoted for women. So it can be done. And she mentions another lady trucker that she knows who is just 5'3" and has been driving since 1988. So you can make these things work. Heck, we even talked about that really short gentleman. Or is that in this article? I've lost track at this point. Yeah, I think we've already talked about it, but a really short truck driver who works for Variant. And he's like 4'8" or something like that. I don't remember, 4'6". He was really, really, really short, and he was able to do the job. So here's a quote from Miss Wood. She says, "The truth is either you can do this job or you can't. Women are great at finding a way to get things done. That is not to say the way truck design is naturally evolved isn't helpful and appreciated, but to frame it as making trucks so women can drive them is highly offensive." Everybody gets so offended at everything nowadays. What's up with that? Now, another place Ms. Voya and Ms. Wood disagree with is driver pay for women. Apparently, there is a Department of Labor survey published last year that found that male truckers make 1.3 times more money than women. Ellen Voya says that is simply not true. She says an Omnitrack study, which is an e-log company, she said it actually found that women run more miles than men. Interesting. I guess that's per person, not overall, obviously, but that's interesting. That one really surprised me. I'm having my doubts on that one, but who knows? I guess Omnitrack has no reason to lie about how many miles women run compared to men. Very interesting. Haven't seen that survey, but wow. All right, whatever. So basically, Ellen Voya is saying there is no difference in pay. Desiree Wood, however, agrees with the Department of Labor. She says, and I quote, "Entry-level driver training fleets generally have low pay across the board and pay according to experience level. But we find in experienced level fleets, often the women are being paid less and given the worst equipment over the men." She talks about women truckers that she knows who, for instance, were hired in oil fields or construction, and they're actually asked to train men, but the men within just a few short months are making more money than them and driving the newest trucks, whereas they're still stuck in these older trucks. Now, I have no experience in that, obviously, but if that's happening, that is really not cool. As far as the pay goes in general, I wonder how the Department of Labor is figuring this. If they're just looking at your total bring home at the end of the year, I could totally understand that men would make more than women because often women are doing two things. Maybe they're, maybe they're driving a truck, but they're also trying to run a family back home, whereas the man can often just stay out as long as he wants, just stay out there on the road and make money, lots and lots of money, and never have to worry about being home as much. I don't know. Maybe that's what they need to study. How much are women home compared to men? And actually, further up in this article, it actually says that the Women in Trucking survey shows that safety and home time tied as top concerns among female drivers. So pay was not a part of their main concern. Home time was one of them, and safety was one of them. So the home time, if they're more worried about home time, that's likely to say that they want to be home more often. So maybe that's why they make money. Anyway, I am no kind of an expert on this thing. I just found this article very interesting. I would love it if you women who are listening right now would go over here, read this article on Commercial Carrier Journal, ccjdigital.com, link in the show notes, and give me your thoughts on what is being said here and what I said. If I'm completely wrong about something, please let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. Hey, here's a twist and something we don't do very often. Found this one on freightwaves.com. How carriers can identify log falsification. All right, I don't normally talk to carriers here. I doubt any of you own a huge company, but, certainly don't want to help you figure out how we're cheating on our logs. But that's what this article is all about. But I thought it would be informational for you to know how your carrier is looking at your logs and things they might be focusing on to flag to see if you are actually cheating the logs or not. So the first thing they are looking at is odometer reports. They want to make sure that those miles that you logged actually coincide with what you actually did that day. So for instance, if you're in a 62-mile-an-hour truck and you logged, like 800 miles that day, that's going to raise a red flag, right? So that should be obvious, but, drivers get in trouble for this kind of stuff all the time. The second thing here is an unidentified driving report. Now, we've all experienced this. You may not know that's what it's called, but that's where your truck keeps registering what you did even when you're logged off of your device. So the truck's still keeping track of everything that's going on. You get back in your truck, you log back in, and it says, hey, there was some drive time on this truck. Was this you? And you either accept it or deny it. As an example of that, let's move on to the number 3 and the last one, the personal conveyance report. They say drivers often get in trouble for misusing personal conveyance. So here's how this and the unidentified driving report work together. Say you get 20 miles from your delivery and you just can't make it for whatever reason. You just misjudged on how long it was going to take, and now you're 20 minutes shy, but you really need to make that appointment because you don't want to be stuck until the next day. So what do? You pull over, you switch to off-duty personal conveyance, and you drive the rest of the way in, hoping to God that no cop pulls you over randomly for a DOT inspection. And you get there, no big deal. But if your company is running this unidentified driving report, they're going to be saying, who drove 20 miles before they went on a 10-hour break? That's interesting. Yeah, that may make you look guilty, but that's where this unidentified driving report comes into play, because it's going to flag that and say, hey, somebody drove this truck, but there's nobody is claiming this time. That's pretty much a red flag. Now, hopefully your system is like my system, and if you don't flag anything, like if you don't just blatantly run over your hours and everything goes red on your ELD, the company never hears about it. Now, that all really depends on how proactive your company is, whether they're actually actively looking at your logs to find violations, which I've had plenty of companies who do that, or ones who just don't want to know about it unless it raises a red flag and flags it for audit, the device itself. So anyway, there's more details on this in this article. If you're interested, freightwaves.com. Just thought you might want to know what the carriers are looking for when they're looking at your logs. Oh, and I should say, as the article does, that obviously a lot of this problem could be prevented. If you figure out that if you're not going to be able to make that last 20 miles, sure, you can go ahead and cheat and hope you don't get caught. Or you could just let them know well in advance, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to make it to this point, and they can hopefully have somebody come and meet you and, take that load off your hands and deliver it on time. Or they could just reschedule the appointment for the next day. I mean, hey, what's the big deal? If you're going to be stuck at the receiver anyway because you've run out of hours to get there, you're going to take a 10-hour break there or somewhere nearby. What's the difference whether you take a 10-hour break, 20 miles before you actually get to the delivery and, you just do the delivery the next day? See what I mean? So anyway, as they say in this article, communication is key to making sure you do not violate the hours of service rules. Enough about that. All right, let's finish up this long overdue episode with a couple of fun ones. Found the first one on cdolife.com. Title of this one, here are 8 wild Qualcomm messages that truckers need to see. Okay. Oh, we've all been through this, right? Where we get a Qualcomm message that you just can't believe they actually said that to you, or it makes no sense whatsoever. Well, that's what this is all about. I'm not going to read every one of these. Some of these are kind of stupid, but some of them are pretty darn funny or just plain mean. Now, the first one here just has a whole lot of spelling errors, and I don't know what they're doing. I have a feeling on this one the keyboard was actually screwing up or something, because wow. Nobody is that bad of a speller, I don't think. Go over and take a look at that one. Here's a couple of them that are not very nice. One just says, nothing new, get used to it. Have a great day. Gee, that shows a lot of care for what your trucker is going through right now, doesn't it? Wow. Here's another. Will write up company drivers and owner-operators will be blocked and limited on their load assignments. Any questions, please see me. No more excuses. Youch. Here's a beauty. We've recently had trouble with sending drivers home for their reset, and they don't return right after their 34 hours. Just remember that going home for your day off is a privilege. We are not required to send you home weekly. If you continue to do this, we will keep you out for 3 weeks at a time. The decision is yours. Thanks. Wow. Although I kind of get that point. I worked for a company that only would really allow you 34 basically, and they expect you to come back, and drivers would abuse it all the time. So, hey, I guess if you hire under those stipulations, and well, you deserve to get a message like that, right? And for the last one, this is probably something that every trucker out there has probably thought in their brain, but does not usually say it out loud, at least to the person involved. And, well, it's certainly weird coming from a dispatcher. Drivers, please refrain from telling your super trucker stories to everyone you come across. For the most part, no one cares anyway, but you really have no business being in the office anyway. Wow. Oh, man. First, that's not cool. You should be able to go into your office, the company you work for, and talk to them anytime. If they're wanting you to stay out of the office, then, well, what are they hiding? Why don't they want you to be in there? Remember the old days where you go into your dispatch office and there'd be a plate glass window between you and the office? Gee, wonder why that had to happen. Anyway, go and check this one out if you want a couple of laughs. I've read you all the funny ones, basically. There's actually some nice ones. Some people actually reporting a driver doing something good, and the dispatcher was just saying, "Hey, thanks. I don't get enough calls like this." So that's cool too. So yeah, just thought I'd share that little fun story with you. The last one we're going to talk about was reported to me by Stephen Gorman, who reached out to me in the Trucker Dump Slack group. He found this one on cdlife.com. 1 million dimes reported stolen from Big Rig parked at Philly Walmart. Wow. Now there's a photo here that shows just a bunch of what I assume are dimes laying all over the parking lot out here. It looks like they just ship them in these like 40 or 55 gallon trash bins, I guess. So anyway, this truck had about $750,000 worth of dimes from the Franklin Mint. It was headed to Florida. Now, here's the funny part, at least to me, or stupid. It's just stupid. Apparently, the truck driver was out of hours, so he was close to his home, so he just parked the semi in the Walmart parking lot and went home. When he came back, he found the trailer doors wide open and thousands of dimes scattered on the ground nearby. Police believe they got away with approximately 1 million dimes, which is worth about $100,000. As of the time of this article, they have not figured out who did this yet, which is kind of amazing. I figured Walmart had cameras out in their parking lots. Very interesting. Now, I just found this funny. I mean, who in their right mind would have a $750,000 load and just park it in a Walmart parking lot unattended overnight? That is insane. You're just kind of asking for it. Now, you may think a Walmart parking lot is safe because, cops patrol it every now and then and it's usually lit, but boy, I would just not do that. That's just freaking stupid. And the other funny thing was just something that happened in my head, like, can you imagine how big the thief's eyes got when they popped the trailer open and saw all those dimes. I mean, wow. Even more so, how did they get all these things where they're going? I mean, think about how heavy a 40-gallon trash bin full of dimes would be. How do you even get that unloaded? I don't know. I'm wondering what they did. Maybe they had a pickup truck and they just backed up to it and just started shoveling them off in there with their hands as fast as they could. The other funny thing that struck me was, how do they get rid of these? Okay. How do you spend them? I mean, what do? You have to take, like $10 worth of dimes to this store and cash them in, and $10 worth of dimes to this store. I mean, wow. Think about how long it's going to take you to spend $100,000 in dimes. I mean, you can't just take them all to the bank at once. They're going to say, gee, this is suspicious. This guy's got, $5,000 worth of dimes. Anyway, this is insane. But hey, at least the thief for once made out like a bandit, because one, they didn't get caught. And secondly, they didn't open the trailer doors to find like a load of ramen noodles or something like that. Right? Wow. So anyway, I don't know if you found that story as funny as I did, but, sometimes the stupidity of people just astounds me and I find it funny. So with that, I guess we're done with the news for today. I am well aware that I am way behind and I may have missed something that is vitally important because I just have been lazy and have not really checked the news for the past couple of weeks. So we'll get caught up on the next episode, hopefully. But for now, we're done with the news. There is no Trucker Grub segment again this time around, but we do have some listener feedback.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, first up, we're going to hear from Sean. He writes, "Hello, Mr. McCann. Will you please allow me the great honor to join you and your group of slackers in the Trucker Dump Slack group? Thank you, Sean." Great honor, huh? Well, I don't know as I'd go that far, Sean. Well, Sean did get his invite, and he's in there, but I haven't heard you say anything yet, Sean. What's up with that? Maybe it's because I forgot to greet you. That could be why. Just jump right in. Seriously, bunch of nice people over there. If you, the listener, is looking for a good community online that is really cool and does not make fun of you all the time and belittle you and make you feel stupid for asking questions or, just always being smart aleck. Well, we have a lot of smart alecks in there, but you'll get your questions answered and we have a good time in there. So, you can do that by emailing me at truckerdump@gmail.com, just like Sean O'Neill did. Thanks, Sean. Talk to you soon in there. Next up, we got a couple from David White, who goes by Driver Dave. This first one is regarding how I was talking about how it's hard to check your brakes, your brake lights. Some of these new systems in the trucks will have like an inspection mode where you can hit a button and it will run through the cycles and it will turn on the brakes and the turn signals and all of that stuff, go high beams, low beams. You can check all that stuff just by walking around. It just runs in a continuous pattern. It's pretty great. But as I pointed out, all that's doing is sending an electric signal back to the brake light saying, do the brake lights actually work? That does not actually say if you applying the brake pedal actually applies the lights back there. So while it does help, it's not foolproof. So I was saying it's always been difficult to, be able to check your brake lights unless you're like backed up against a fence or something like that. And you can just tap your brakes and see that the red lights come on back there. But anyway, here's Driver Dave's solution. Be prepared for this. He writes, "Hello, Todd. Here's what I do. In the yard and unhooked, I just look at the rear axle slack adjusters on the tractor, springs applied, and inspect visually. They're 30-inch long strokes, so 2.5 inches readjustment limit." I'm pretty impressed you know that, Driver Dave. I didn't. He goes on, "They are marked from the shop, so I just look. After hookup, yellow button out, red in, so the trailer is charged. I go back and crawl under the wagon and use whiteout to mark the push rods next to the chamber. I get the whiteout at the dollar store. Then I go back and use a piece of string with a loop around the spike. The spike, I believe he's talking about this like little handle where you activate the trailer brakes. I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about here. He goes back, uses a piece of string with a loop around the spike and wrap the other end around one of the brake buttons on the dash to hold the spike down. Then I go back and inspect and measure the push rods. Depending on the trailer, they might be regular stroke 2-inch limit or the long stroke 2.5 inch. Also, I listen for air leaks and look at the brake lights. Otherwise, I would have to use a stick from the seat to the brake pedal. That's my method. Maybe not proper, but it works. For the trailer springs, just apply trailer spring brakes and try to pull it. Roger beep, Driver Dave. And he sent me a picture of a cool little measuring device that his company gave him. Measures tread depth and brake lining. That's kind of cool. Never seen one of those before. Keeps it on his key ring. Nice and handy. Well, Driver Dave, all I have to say about this is you go to way more measures than I do. Probably the way I'm going to get my brake lights checked is just by getting pulled over and a cop telling me that my brake lights don't work. Because there's not a chance in heck I'm ever doing all of that. Now, I should probably figure out, just get a stick of the right length, put it between your seat and your brake pedal, and that would probably work. But I still just don't do it. What the heck? I'll take my chances. But thank you for that tip on how to do that properly. Another follow-up, Driver Dave talks about, the episode we were talking about the tire recycling. He says, "Hello, Todd. You were talking about tire recycling in your latest episode. Reminds me of that massive tire fire back in 1990 in Hagersville, Ontario." He says, "Google the tire fire there." Well, I did, and holy crap, that is the biggest pile of tires I have ever seen in my life. I put a link in the show notes. There's a 48-second video that shows what's going on here with some graphics, some wording up there that shows you all the details of it. For instance, they said this pile of tires covered 18 football fields. Wow. And it's pretty tall too. He goes on and says it burned for 17 days. Some guy had hoarded 14 million tires and figured he would get rich recycling them. So apparently the province had him in court because they thought it was a fire hazard. Yeah, really? Meanwhile, some kid set fire to them with some gasoline. That led to billowing toxic gases in the air and 250 firefighters, 2 water bombers, and drove 4,000 people out of their homes. What a mess. Now we have an environmental fee added to each new tire to deal with recycling costs. Thought this would interest you? Roger beep, Driver Dave. Thank you, Driver Dave. That was very interesting. And yeah, I think those environmental tire fees are everywhere. We've got them down here in the States too. But hey, I'm happy to pay that fee just to get rid of the tires, right? And hopefully they do recycle them and or rework them, whatever they need to do to not have a 17-day fire. Anyway, check out the link in the show notes on this one. That is a big fire. Wow, what a mess. So thank you for those comments there, Driver Dave. We're going to move on to this split sleeper berth, and I've got a bit of an update on that one too. But let's hear from a couple of listeners and what they say about it. Now, if you're new to the show, what we're talking about here is for a while I was able to use the split sleeper berth to extend my 14-hour day, by taking a break that was 2 hours or more off duty. The odd thing is I'm in a day cab and I have no sleeper, but it worked for whatever reason. Well, I raised the issue to the company because it quit working for a while and I was just wanting it back. And lo and behold, it all backfired on me. The company realized they were doing it wrong and they cut it out of the system completely. The option is not there anymore. I got a message back. I had emailed the FMCSA about this and they said it is not legally allowed and all of that stuff. So anyway, got an update on that here in a minute, but let's first hear from JD Sowers. Hope I pronounced that right there, JD. He writes, "Can't shed light on the legality, but I got a message on the Qualcomm from my company last week saying day cabs were ineligible for split sleeper berth. I honestly thought it was a bit of a joke, but I see where you're coming from and think it should be allowed. If the spirit of the regulation is to allow better time management, it shouldn't matter where you take that break. I think the concern is that a lot of guys will try to rack out in the cab." First time listener, by the way. Love the show. Looking forward to an update on this issue. Well, that update is coming in just a second here, JD, but I think you're probably right about the sleeper berth part of that. They're just concerned about drivers, trying to rough it out and take a 10-hour break in a day cab, just sleeping across the seats or something. And that is just not smart. But that is really not what I'm asking for here. Most day cab drivers are either spending their nights in the hotel or at their home. So, arguably getting better rest than somebody in a sleeper berth. But regardless, thank you for writing in, JD. I really appreciate your thoughts on that. Let's move on to Mike Rogers, who lays it out for us. He writes, you said 3.5 hours, I think. And I was talking about, if you take a 3.5 hour break, you can extend your workday 3.5 hours. He says, I'm pretty sure anything over 3 doesn't count. You'd get 3, but not 3.5. Well, before we go on with the rest of Mike's email, let's address this. On this matter, I think you're wrong about this, but I am not 100% sure. Now, here's what I do know. We've already established that my company was allowing it when they shouldn't have. So I'm not sure that I trust what my e-logs say, but I do know for a fact that we had a driver just recently before all this happened, and he had a breakdown and it took him 4 hours, and he logged the whole time off duty until the truck got there and changed out his tire. And he was able to get all 4 of those hours back and finish the run. And he has a nice long run, 630 some miles. And there's no way he could have done that without that break. It did give him all 4 hours back. So again, I'm pretty sure that is actually legal. They just shouldn't have been allowing us to do it in the first place. But if you have a sleeper cab, that would have been legal. If anybody can straighten me out and point me to this, the actual rule on this, honestly, I've just been lazy lately and haven't gone to look, but I've always understood that it doesn't matter if it's 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever, it's going to give you that time back. As long as it doesn't start creeping into like the 7 and 8 hour or even a full 10-hour break. Because honestly, a full 10 hours is just going to reset your everything completely, right? I'm not exactly sure, but I think that would, I think it's going to give you all your time back. But if you know for sure, please write in, send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com. And he goes on and, well, this is the crux of the matter, right? He says, I think you're going to find that it's the black and white that matters. The major part of the break, if it says sleeper berth, that's what it means. Day cabs don't have sleepers. Motels don't have sleeper berths. If you're lucky and it says rest period, you're covered. I've never tried using any off-duty for both periods. If your ELD allows you to do it, you might be all right, or at least flying under the radar. Well, Mobile Mike, I believe that is the case. I was flying under the radar because I don't think my company was doing it correctly according to the letter of the law, like you call it, the black and white here. And you're right. It does say sleeper berth. It mentions the rest periods, the 2 rest periods, as like describing how it works, like if you get the 2 rest periods. But earlier it says one of those rest periods has to be at least 7 hours in the sleeper berth. So it is very specific about that. But again, I'm going to say it's wrong. And but anyway, thank you for the email, Mike. I do appreciate it. Now, for the follow-up on this, I actually did turn in a petition to the FMCSA. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I'll put a link in the show notes to where you can go do that. If you have an idea for a rule to be changed or something like that, it's a very weird format. It looks like you're submitting a comment. All you have to do is click on the comment up there, and I believe that is what they're looking at. It says right there at the top that anything put in here will be considered as, a suggestion or for revision or amendment or whatever it says up there. It's very, it's kind of vague, but I think the idea is they're just using the commenting system for you to be able to go in there and ask for something to be changed. So anyway, I did that, spent about, 2 hours typing that up, making sure all the wording was perfect and all the points were laid out there. I think it allowed 5,000 characters. So that was a lot of, it gave me a lot of space. Amazingly enough, I didn't use it all, which is not typical of me, but I was able to get my ideas across, and hopefully we'll hear something from that in the future. Now, I do know these things take a while. They're busy people, and they will likely look at it, and, they'll discuss it for a long time. They'll either just throw it out the window, or if they think it has some merit, well, I'm not exactly sure about that. I would assume that they go through those and see if there's any merit to it whatsoever. If it's just blatantly against the rules and they just see it's wrong, I guess they could just throw it out. Or maybe they have to post it because somebody submitted it and put it up for public comment for 30 days. Either way, I will keep you informed with this as it goes along. And boy, I hope they change that rule, because to me, it's just stupid. I even left them out in my thing, and I said, listen, I understand if you're saying that, like a day cab driver, if they're getting a 7 or an 8 hour break to go towards a 14-hour pause, that it's, maybe I can see their point that it's going to take you a while to drive to the hotel or home to get that sleep. And, that's going to be eating into the 7 or 8 hours. But I said, there's absolutely no reason if you get a full 10 that you shouldn't be able to use that pause later on by getting at least a 2-hour break. That was my argument. We'll see what they say about it. Anyway, that process was easier than I thought. It was just figuring out how to go about doing it. So that's going to do it for listener feedback. Thanks again to Mike and JD for writing about the day cab, split sleeper berth and all that stuff. Thanks to Sean for writing in and joining the Trucker Dump Slack group. Looking forward to talking to you over there. And of course, thanks to driver Dave for pointing us to this crazy tire fire and his insane way of figuring out whether his brake lights are working. All right. As far as I can tell, I am all caught up on emails. If I have missed yours in the past and have not responded, please let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. Also, if you have a trucker grub segment where you like to tell us about your favorite place to eat, please write in and tell me that. Keep that about 3 minutes or less. That's audio only, by the way. Tell us where you can park your truck. Tell us what kind of food they have, what the prices are like, the atmosphere, maybe your favorite meal. Whatever good information you got about this restaurant and where you can find it would be great. If you can include a link like a website, that would be awesome too. Sometimes these restaurants are hard to find on Google. Well, it's hard to find a good link anyway. So anyway, anything at all you have to say to me, please write in and tell me. truckerdump@gmail.com. So with that, I guess I'll just put this sucker in reverse, back out of here, and head on down the road. Y'all be safe out there. Well, like I said earlier, I've been struggling with motivation to keep this podcast going. With that said, I need your help to streamline the show so it doesn't take so much of my time. So I guess my question is, what's your favorite part of the show? What's your least favorite? And what news do you really want to hear about? And what couldn't you care less about? Now, please be honest, as I can't possibly salvage the show without honest, constructive criticism. I will not be sharing these emails on the air, so please feel free to be blunt. Just get your thoughts together and shoot them off to truckerdump@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you. As always, I appreciate you listening and following the show. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Okay, let's say we... Nah. Okay, let's say we get... Okay, I lied. I have one more union thing, only it's only tangentially related to tangentially? Is that a word? That one surprised me. Wow, what happened there? And they're also wanting to put regulations on automated. That's not a word. Tell us where you can park. Tell us about the restaurant. What kind of serve they food? Tell us where you can truck your park. What the hell's wrong with me?